Hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well. So, if you haven't been up to date on some of the things that have been happening on this channel, I wanted to take this video to provide you an update surrounding a very frustrating and angering situation recently that involved a video of mine that was about discussing the Daily Wire host Matt Walsh's transphobic documentary, What is a Woman, as well as some of the misinformation and directly harmful rhetoric that was being used in that film and elsewhere by Walsh's content, and that video being hit with a community violation for breaking YouTube's sex and nudity policy. So the reason that I am providing this update is because I actually had initially planned on doing this video after I was able to re-edit the Matt Walsh video and release it here on YouTube, which I now have done, so please go check out that video because I am very proud of it and I think it has a lot of really helpful and informative information in it. And this video was initially going to be much angrier and go into much more detail surrounding some stuff that had happened since that video came out, and more has been sort of happening behind the scenes in that discussion. And I might make that angrier video at some point, depending on how things go from where we are at right now. But the long and short of it is that with the amazing folks over at Nebula, which, if you don't know what Nebula is, it is a streaming platform that I and many other YouTube creators are helping to build as a place separate from the YouTube algorithm where we can put out our videos. This situation surrounding my video has enabled there to be some sparking of more extensive discussions with YouTube that are still ongoing and developing. The fact that YouTube is open to these discussions, I am currently taking in good faith, and with an earnest hope that it will be a chance to improve this platform and make it safer, not just for me, but for all creators generally, as well as more specifically oft marginalized and misunderstood communities. Where we are at right now in the discussion is kind of more in the process of setting up those talks, but I wanted to release this video because I felt that I owed all of you an update, especially considering I released an edited version of my Matt Walsh video, and also because of the fact that the entire reason that these conversations are happening in the first place is because of all of you. So I wanted to be open with all of you where we're at, as well as use this video as an opportunity for you all to hold me and YouTube accountable for these conversations, as well as point out my concerns publicly with how YouTube has treated these types of conversations around trans and marginalized communities in the past, and my hope that they will be able to try to course correct about in future with these discussions. So since I'm hoping to use this video right here as a sort of beginning point for a lot of people to hear what I have to say on this topic, let's just go into a larger overview and context for what's been happening. On October 14th, 2022, I publicly released the aforementioned Matt Walsh video here on my channel. A few hours after that video was posted, it was taken down, and the reason being was that my channel was hit with a community violation for the video, which was a warning at the time because it was my first time being hit with such a violation, and the video itself was removed from YouTube due to, in YouTube's own words, quote, thinking it violates our sex and nudity policy, which, according to their policy, is, quote, content featuring non-consensual sexual activity, unwanted sexualization, or that otherwise degradingly sexualizes an individual. For those of you who don't know, community violations are an incredibly scary thing for creators here on YouTube, separate from things like copyright strikes, because violations can prevent you from uploading content for a week on your second violation, and once you get a warning and 3 strikes for community violations, your channel, and for many of us creators, our source of livelihood and professional output, can be totally deleted. So this video getting a community violation made me very angry as an individual creator for several reasons. First and foremost, I didn't know why the video was initially flagged. Was it Matt Walsh fans acting in bad faith mass flagging the video? Was the video flagged because of an AI that uncaringly selected it without nuance? Or was there an actual human at YouTube who watched the video and flagged it? Secondly, going along with the opaqueness of that process, once I was given the violation, I was given no specifics on what caused this violation in my 4-hour-long video, leading me to have to guess at what the issue was, which is difficult considering the video's length, as well as the fact that the video dealt with complex topics surrounding sexualization and misinformation around LGBTQ and transgender individuals. On top of all of that, I was only given 800 words in the appeal process to be able to articulate my issues with the violation, which, given that I didn't know what the issue was, meant that I had to try to argue multiple points with as minimal words as possible, not even knowing which, if any, was the correct issue. Most importantly, I didn't, and still don't, believe anything in the original video constituted a violation of YouTube's policy. And then finally, I took issue with the way that the notification of my violation was worded, as it stated that my video was removed from YouTube in, quote, hopes of making YouTube a safe space for everyone, which to me implied that my video, which itself was about another creator here on YouTube's misinformation and anti-LGBTQ statements that he has been making in his own YouTube channel, as well as in his transphobic documentary, What is a Woman, that he spent hundreds of thousands of advertising dollars on here on YouTube, that video, my video, was somehow unsafe for YouTube. And that is something that I took deep offense to. I took offense both as a creator as well as the fact that it seemed to ignore that this video was about someone else who was not making YouTube safe for everybody. So from this point, I attempted to appeal the community violation, and my appeal was then denied around 48 hours after I sent it in, and I was given no more reasons or more specifics on why the appeal was denied. I was just given this email that you're seeing on screen right now. This angered me even more, not just for all the reasons that I've already articulated, but also because that I was now left with seeming no recourse to push back against the decision and no way to precisely know what the issue was with my video in the first place. So if I wish to re-edit the video and put it up on YouTube, that it would mean that I would have to censor everything that I possibly thought might meet their criteria for community violation, which might mean that I might edit things that weren't even an issue in the first place, and if I got it wrong, meant risking another community violation on my channel. Or the other option is I don't release it on YouTube at all. Which, given that YouTube itself is my biggest platform, meant that the video that I had spent a lot of physical and emotional energy on creating and was very proud of and thought was important for people to see was not going to be able to get out to the audience that I intended it for. So that's how the situation basically went down, and that's sort of the last update that I gave people here on this channel. And this situation has led me to have two intertwined yet separate concerns, both as a creator on YouTube and as an LGBTQ creator on YouTube. As just a general YouTube creator, I take issue with how YouTube's system of community violation, as well as similar systems like age gating, have been enacted. I take issue with how opaque it is and how difficult it is to get specific information on why a video received an age gate or a community violation in the first place, as well as the lack of tools and information that YouTube gives creators to make our case for our video, and the lack of protection of our channels on this platform when those things occur. And this is not a concern individual to me as a creator at all, but an increasingly more prominent issue on YouTube. Other creators like FD Signifier, Ask a Mortician, Jacob Geller, and more have all been hit with similar age gates and or community violations with the same lack of transparency from YouTube within just the past few weeks or days even. And this, by the way, is an issue that cuts across political affiliations. It's been a growing issue for months now for all creators of all kinds on YouTube. We as creators deserve to be able to have transparency in these issues. Yet, beyond that, I also have a larger concern as an LGBTQ creator. While my video on Matt Walsh gets flagged despite its clear educational context, as well as several other of my videos on this channel getting age-gated within the past few months as well, videos like Matt Walsh's here on YouTube continue to stay up despite the misinformation and, quote, unwanted sexualization that is in them. Matt Walsh spreads misinformation about trans people almost daily, leading to direct harm. I've done bigger videos on this, but take Walsh's spreading of clear misinformation about Boston's Children's Hospital giving hysterectomies to unconsenting minors, misinformation that platforming contributed directly to the harassment of the Children's Hospital and bomb threats against them. Harassment that Walsh himself directly stoked, even after knowing that the harassment was ongoing.
Children's hospitals around the country are butchering, mutilating, and sterilizing their young patients. So according to Boston Children's Hospital, literally every toddler who has ever been born or will ever be born is trans. Now, if it seems like they're casting the widest imaginable net in order to catch the most children they can and put them all on a path to sterilization and butchery before they can even talk, well, that's because that's exactly what these monsters are doing. And they've done it up until this moment without much resistance from the public. But that has to end. We have to stop making it so easy on them. And that's why I'm in the very early stages of trying to organize a national coordinated effort to fight back against this evil. It's really just a matter of where do we begin? Maybe we begin at Boston Children's Hospital.
He has also repeatedly sexualized trans and LGBTQ people generally with the groomer narrative, saying things like, trans ideology is sexualizing children at a young age.
The people out there shouting, they're not going to stand for the kids. They stand for victimizing and preying upon kids. So it falls to us. Now, here's the fact of the matter. There is, in this state and all across the country, a conspiracy to target and indoctrinate our children into the cult of gender ideology. A cult which fosters delusion, intentionally creates an identity crisis in young, impressionable kids. It's a cult which convinces them that gender doesn't exist, that they have no identity. It's a path to confusion and despair. Let me ask you guys this. As Tennesseans, do we believe in castrating children? Do we believe in that? No.
He's also individually sexualized and harassed individual trans people on his channel, leading to direct harassment of them.
By using all of our platforms to amplify this story, we can ensure that whenever anyone Googles this person in the future, potential employers or anybody else, they will immediately see that Eli Ehrlich is a confessed peddler. This is already working. We've already prompted several news outlets, including Fox, to cover the scandal. And we're going to continue because we can make sure that this creep is branded by these admitted crimes for eternity. So if you want to contact local law enforcement, if you haven't done that yet, I know a lot of people have, you can contact local law enforcement, let them know they have a confessed dealer running this prescription ring in the city. Maybe they should want to do something about that. I also mentioned that Ehrlich is a PhD candidate at University of California, Santa Cruz. Now, I said last week that I'd give the leadership there a day to respond and to tell us what steps they would take to address this before I started giving out their contact information. Well, they never did address it, and I was out for a week. So they actually ended up getting a week. And now it's time to escalate. But we should start, I think, with the chancellor of the university, who is Cynthia Larive. And we'll put her contact information up there. Here's the cover of the magazine with Gabrielle Mack. And you see her in her underwear with a huge hole dug out of her thigh there. You can see that in the thigh. But you also notice something else, the sad thing here. If we can select just one sad thing from this tragic, grotesque spectacle, and that is that she still doesn't look at all like a man, right? She has wide hips, kind of an hourglass figure. She's very small and petite. Now, she doesn't look like a woman, certainly, but neither does she look like a man. She's in sort of, if you choose to destroy yourself, you'll be left with this, which is what all trans people who get surgeries are left with. You're left living in a prison of your own making, stuck like that forever.
And these are but a few examples. And much of this, one would think, would also constitute unwanted sexualization under YouTube's policies, as well as hate speech and discrimination. But his videos remain up. And I'm not even going after Matt Walsh specifically here. He's just the example at hand because the video was about him. There are dozens to hundreds to maybe thousands of videos on YouTube that sexualize trans people in this way. From the biggest of platforms like Fox News to small single-digit channels. Some people call the simple fact of being transgender a fetish, for example. And this is all part of a long history of the sexualization of LGBTQ and transgender folks in our culture. Now, some would take all of this as evidence that YouTube has a direct transphobic bias against trans people, which I will say is possible. And actually, a few things came to light during the editing of this video that make that situation a distinct greater possibility, that I'll talk about in just a few minutes. Yet, what it more signals to me is direct evidence of how normalized anti-trans talking points have become in our society. Walsh's and other people's words around transgender people get considered just asking questions, despite it being unwanted sexualization, misinformation, and discriminatory. But sexualizing transgender people is considered par for the course and normal, and thus not seen to be violating policy in the eyes of YouTube. while my and other creators discussing Matt Walsh's harm and me making lame jokes about him in an educational context could be taken as unwanted sexualization, as even potentially sexualizing a cisgender man in our society is seen as abnormal and thus more recognized immediately as violating community policies. All of this to me underscores how we as a culture view cis men as inherently not sexual and LGBTQ and transgender folks specifically as inherently sexual, which is then reflected in how YouTube's policies are seemingly disproportionately enacted against LGBTQ and trans folks. So I would argue that the fact that my video was flagged at all, regardless of if it violated policy or not, while dozens of groomer narrative videos and misinformation around trans people is spread on YouTube daily unchallenged, highlights this discriminatory bias that comes from a more extensive cultural normalization of the sexualization of transgender people specifically. But this is not specific to transgender people, but to many marginalized communities. For example, FD Signifier's videos educating on black sexuality or LGBTQ creator James Somerton's videos constantly get demonetized or age-gated regularly. So given this bias in my eyes, as well as numerous other issues with YouTube as a platform, like the fact that hate is allowed to spread in comment sections unchecked in most cases, and how recent studies have shown that YouTube will also be more likely to recommend conservative videos to you, even if you expressly ask it not to recommend those channels to you, then if YouTube's goal is to, quote, make YouTube a safer place for everybody, then to me, I think they have failed at that, especially in the case for marginalized communities, because I know many LGBTQ folks on YouTube, do not feel safe at all, especially within certain spaces. Also, to the Matt Walsh fans out there who might be seeing this video who will argue, well, you say this is happening to trans people, but right-wing people get it too, and they're just speaking up against gender ideology. I would say that, to me, the evidence does not bear that out, as it appears that they don't get half as much of these violations as LGBTQ folks do, despite their rhetoric being incredibly misinformative, antagonistic, and often hateful. But even if we did get the same exact amount of violations, it's important to remember that LGBTQ people, and trans people specifically, are not an ideology. We are a people. The two are not the same. It has only been because of these misinformed narratives around LGBTQ and trans people that we have been so politicized and seen as a political ideology when we are not. We are a community of people. Moving on though, thankfully, after I publicly expressed my anger at this situation, all of you out there in my audience were incredibly, amazingly supportive and vocal about your anger at this situation alongside me. And I wish to take a moment right here to thank all of you for your fantastic support of me, both here in the comments on YouTube, on Twitter, on my Patreon, and on Nebula. And I will say directly, your outspokenness led to YouTube taking notice of this entire situation. And from there, the amazing folks over at Nebula, working with me, began having conversations with YouTube on my behalf. And they managed to get the appeal re-reviewed. This is something that only managed to happen because of your outcry, as well as my privilege at being on Nebula, which itself was only caused by your outcry at a similar situation that occurred earlier this year with the age gating of one of my sex and Star Trek videos, which then caused me to be noticed as a creator by Nebula, leading to them asking me to join their platform. So literally this entire chain of events is because of you. Those conversations between myself, Nebula, and YouTube led to, after some back and forth that I won't get into the specifics of because there are things that frustrate me in there, including them sending me a third email where they still did not tell me what the problem was with the video specifically, though they did point to which part of the violation was the problem. YouTube did at least decide to remove the community violation warning that I had on my channel, which I am incredibly glad for. However, frustratingly, the removal of the warning does not, in YouTube's eyes, means that they feel that the video did not violate policy, as the video's original edit will remain down, which I find frustrating. Frustrating on the one hand because I don't think that my video still violated policy, something I'll talk about more in just a second, but also frustrating in the sense that they decided to take away the warning but still say the video had a violation, which reads to me as them taking the warning off my channel not as some sort of apology or recognizing that wrong was done, but that they just wish to appease me after I made a big stink about it and people on Twitter talked about it a lot. thereby hoping that by doing this it would get me to be less angry about the whole situation because the ramifications on my channel were small. Yet Nebula was able to help me get specifics as to what caused the violation in the first place, and it all ultimately comes down to a brief joke that I made near the 4-minute mark of the video where I make an implied sexual joke about the cartoonish mannequin that I have in the video that has Matt Walsh's head stuck on it. Yeah. That was the reason for the violation. A literal 5-second joke. Now, I personally consider that joke to fall clearly within the lines of the educational and artistic intent of the video. But even further, I also believe that it falls within the ideals of political parody that fall within YouTube's community guidelines, as it's a cartoon parody version of Walsh that is used to highlight the way trans people are sexualized. It is not about Walsh himself. Believe me, I have zero desire to sexualize Matt Walsh as a person. Believe me. Also, the joke itself is only implied to be sexual and is not explicitly so I still take issue with the violation as a whole. All of this is not even to mention the fact that the entire argument of the video as a whole is that Matt Walsh is a fascist who is contributing directly to the current larger anti-trans and white supremacist rhetoric in our country that is helping to lead to an attempted cultural genocide of transgender people. So, my joke at a cartoon-esque version of Matt that references X-Men Origins Wolverine feels like it should be small potatoes in regards to that larger conversation and points towards more significant issues at YouTube that they let that man on their platform still, but here we are. But even if you disagree with me and think that that joke violated YouTube's policies, I would say that it still doesn't disparage my concerns about the opaqueness of this entire process from YouTube, as well as the fact that it took a ton of my own community's vocal outrage and much of my own effort using resources available to me that not many other creators have access to in order to get this specific information about what the issue was with the video in the first place, something that should have been provided at the onset of all of this, not at the end. And it also wouldn't put away my feelings that there is a bias in the fact that my video was hit with this unwanted sexualization violation when this occurs often on YouTube's platforms against LGBTQ and trans folks specifically, both individually and as a group, but not against people pushing a lot of anti-transgender misinformation. So, continuing on the conversations that Nebula already had with YouTube, Nebula has helped push for a larger conversation with YouTube about this situation. And this is a conversation that has become even bigger as it's not just with me at this point, because it's a situation that should not just be about me as an individual creator, but about all of YouTube's creators, specifically LGBTQ creators as well as other creators from communities who face similar stigmatization. So, with Nebula, several other creators and I are currently discussing bigger and more direct venues to talk to folks at YouTube about these issues. And we, and I specifically, hope that these conversations are being asked to be had in earnest by YouTube, as a genuine desire on their part to learn and to hear our points of views, and not just a way to silence us, our concerns, and our oft intersecting communities' understandable outcry and issues. As of right now, the place and way that these discussions are going to be had is still developing, so I can't give specifics at this moment, but it is moving forward. Where I am at currently going into these larger conversations is that I am still very much bothered by this situation as a whole, but I have seen attempts on YouTube's part to try to rectify the situation, and I want to trust that this attempt by YouTube to have these conversations is being made in good faith. So that's my hope. However, I don't want to go in being fully naive about the situation, because I have seen some of my fellow transgender creators on YouTube, both with channels bigger and smaller than me, like Cat Black and Adequate Emily, who have had this kind of outreach happen by YouTube before with them, and after that happened, came away feeling like they still weren't appreciated, heard, or even felt like they were just being used. Like how my friend and transgender creator Adequate Emily, who you should totally check out by the way, spoke about how she was reached out to by YouTube's support team when she was dealing with an issue that she felt was discriminating against her as a trans creator. However, when she asked to have the conversation opened up to more than just herself as a trans creator, YouTube denied that ask, saying that they just wanted to speak to her, which felt like to her YouTube just trying to shut down the talks by trying to appease her specifically, instead of having an earnest desire to have a conversation about how trans people were treated on their platform. I mean, to be very frank, on the very day that I'm recording this video, Kat Black, another transgender creator, on a live stream and in a community post that was posted while I was editing this video, spoke about how she was flown out to an event where she was going to be celebrated as part of a Black Creator Fund for 2022 that YouTube was holding, but while that event was going on, she was given no information about where to go or when to show up, and no one getting back to her when she reached out to them, meaning that she flew all the way out there and had to sit in her hotel room with no one even noticing that she wasn't there for the thing that she was supposed to be there for. And then, after all this had happened, YouTube asked to speak to her, but after those talks happened, she came away feeling that YouTube didn't care if she was on their platform or not, and just liked having her at the table in order to score diversity points. Which is a huge issue, if that's where they're really trying to come at these conversations from.
I want to talk to you guys about how the conversation with YouTube yesterday went. And I'm sure y'all could probably piece together how it went, because someone left a comment that was really good. It was like, it doesn't matter that that they're interested in talking to you after the fact. It's after the fact. The shit really happened. The shit really, really fucking happened. It already happened, right? So even if we can talk about it, we're still in a situation where shit that happened should not have happened. And that truly is just kind of that on that. So any way you cut it, it's not good. I have to really reconcile with, like I said, the more likely reality, which is that my presence is not important enough for it to be missed at these events. Now, there were actually several creators who noticed me not being there, because apparently they used all of my images and things in the in the program. Like, apparently there were all these videos of mine playing and things like that. Someone told me that I almost won some sort of award, like going back to what I was venting about in my other video about how, I kind of get the impression that they are just really excited about using me as a tool of representation or whatever. It definitely gives the impression that I get is like, I'm only valued as much as I am the ticks on the box that they can mark off to say, oh, look who we're including, right? So my video is playing on the screen, right? That gives the impression of, oh, look, we've got one of those. We've got one of them, right? We've got a trans person who's, on our website doing cool stuff, right? But then, me actually getting there, me actually being there, actually making it to the event, actually being able to safely attend and safely and comfortably attend the event, that's a whole other issue. It didn't matter so much that I wasn't there. They had pictures of me on the wall.
I can't speak for YouTube or Kat Black in this situation, but that was her takeaway of the situation, and frankly, I have a lot of respect for her voice and opinion. I am also well aware that YouTube has a financial interest in continuing to platform these individuals who say stuff about transgender people. Videos about the dangers of trans ideology often do well in the algorithm, especially in right-wing spaces right now, considering how vilified and scapegoated transgender people are. Not to mention that YouTube often gets advertising dollars from places like The Daily Wire, PragerU, and Matt Walsh for their transphobic videos, such as the What is a Woman documentary having spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on ad money. All of this speaks to me to the fact that I and other transgender folks are not only made to not feel safe on YouTube, both as audience members and creators, but that there might be potentially a culture of transphobic bias as well as a financial interest in supporting transphobic platforms at YouTube, as well as them having a tokenistic look at transgender people and creators on their platform. So while I believe the enactment of the community violation policy against my video specifically came more out of a cultural bias against transgender people, there are clear larger institutional issues that speak to me to be at play at YouTube when it comes to transgender people. I am taking YouTube in good faith here, and I am coming into it with hope, and I think I am lucky to have folks at Nebula behind me and other creators with me that might make this specific conversation different, but I will remain skeptical and open about my feelings with them. And I also wish to say to YouTube people, if they're listening, that if you want to have these conversations in earnest, then you have to be ready to have these conversations and talk about these issues that I have outlined in this video. You don't just get to try to appease me specifically as a creator by dealing with my video specifically. This is a larger issue. But if you are willing to have that conversation, I am willing to have it with you, but you have to be ready to have that conversation. And if you aren't, know that I will be clear about the fact that I felt that you weren't. So all of that is where we're at right now, and I hope that this video is a way to just sort of set the table for the conversation, as well as let you all know where we are at. Beyond that, if you have not seen it, I have re-released my Matt Walsh video with edits to appease YouTube's view of their community violation policy. While I disagree with YouTube's opinion on the original video's violation, I am more concerned with the video being released as promptly as possible, as I think the larger discussion in the video, beyond what was considered the violation, is important to be available to a broad audience. If you do want it, an uncensored version is available on Nebula and Patreon, and that does help me out more directly than YouTube's algorithm does. Speaking on that though, again, the most earnest thing that I can say in all of this is I could not have done any of this. I could not get to where I am, both as a channel, both as a creator, and in these conversations, if it were not for all of you. I would not be able to fight this fight if it weren't for this community and the financial, emotional, and physical support you all give me. It is all very appreciated in any way, shape, or form that you give me support. It means a lot. Even if it's just a nice comment here on YouTube, because heaven help me, that even that can sometimes feel like a diamond in the rough. And also, more importantly, you also allow me to be a big weirdo dork for a job. Like, I have to deal with this serious stuff, but like I also get to be a big weirdo dork for my day job. So thank you for that. Let's not forget that. So wrapping out, I hope that this situation can turn into something positive and a force for good. It shouldn't have happened at all, nor should it happen to other creators as it has been for months and years now. But maybe we can make YouTube a safer place for not only all creators, but more importantly to me, marginalized communities, and specifically to me, the transgender community, which is currently deeply, deeply under attack by many in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and around the world. I'm not so naive as to think we can completely change a fundamental issue of our society and culture, or even change the entire institutional problems within YouTube, but perhaps I can, along with others, can make it a bit better for those working and trying to enjoy this space safely. But even more so, it's an opportunity that I hope I will not be the center of, but just one voice within, because ultimately, this is not just about me. I share this video in hopes that you all will hold me accountable for fighting for that goal, and holding YouTube responsible for understanding that it needs to change.